Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show, Particularly Innovative, where we chat all things DeFi. My name is Mango. I'm the creative director at Charged Particles, and I'm joined here by Morpheus, who's the CTO at Morphex and BMX. Thanks so much for jumping on the show with me today.
Hi, yeah, awesome to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the future of DeFi and innovation, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your platform, or your both of them really, and for people who maybe haven't heard of Morphex or BMX, just to get a bit of a sense of what you guys offer and what sets you apart in the DeFi space. So I was wondering if you could give, maybe a brief overview or insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're originally a project that launched in 2021 on Phantom. It was only a spot exchange. Then in the beginning of 2023, we decided to do a new iteration or a V2, if you'd like to call it that. That was deployed on Phantom, but we quickly realized that we wanted to really change up our tokenomics for something that was a lot better than what we had gone with. And from that came BMX, which is essentially our Morphex deployment, but focused on the superchain. So currently it's deployed on Base, as well as a few weeks ago we deployed on Mode. And soon we plan to also deploy on Optimism.
Great. Yeah. And so, with, having been deployed on so many chains, can you give me some insight about, what it's like to operate in the multi-chain world, especially, the super chain and Phantom being kind of different ecosystems, what does that look like to you in this growing world of interoperability?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. There's definitely a large difference in building on Phantom versus building on something like a layer two. I think one of the easiest but true answers you can give is just the difference in mindset and like community. The people building on Phantom as layer one, I think, in general, like layer ones, if you take Solana or some other chains like that, it feels usually that the developers and the community are really only focused on just their chain, not really, playing nice with other communities or with other chains and stuff. Whereas moving towards the super chain, you're able to see that it's a lot more collective building across different chains. The idea is that, right, like everybody can contribute something, and this will provide like for the greater good of the superchain in general, which is focused on Ethereum. So there's a common goal, even if you're on a different chain, that unifies everybody. Uh, which, as a developer, I would say that really it increases the pleasure of working on that chain by a huge amount. Just because there's so many new opportunities, there's so many interesting builders compared to just like a secluded sort of community. I mean, also one of the main choices really why we moved from Phantom. Like, we're still deployed there, but our main focus really is on the super chain, while Phantom is kind of waiting for its upgrade. But as probably many people are aware, last summer there was a multi-chain hack. Phantom was holding a lot of its TVL in multi-chain bridged assets. That all lost peg, it dropped. Basically, the entire chain's liquidity like just ghosted. Kind of fitting for the name Phantom, but yeah. So with that, we were kind of forced to deploy to a new chain as soon as possible, and we were really lucky at that time. Base had just launched, and so we then deployed on Base in the beginning of September. And yeah, since then it's been really smooth sailing, I would say. Base doesn't provide such direct incentives, I would say, as maybe like the Phantom Foundation, but it's also in a good way, because there's a lot of like abuse that was seen with all the grants that was being given out on Phantom for liquidity, for TBL. They had to redo the program a couple of times. It worked, but there was definitely a lot of inefficiencies in that system. Whereas on Base, there are some incentives like builder grants that you can get. but it's not really the main driving factor towards the chain, which I think is the most important ingredient in what makes Base so special and the super chain in general is that most of the people coming to build there and protocols that are deploying, especially with the case of Base, like it wasn't because of huge liquidity incentives that were being announced or something like that. Um, it's really because people trust Coinbase to make a really good blockchain, which like we fully align with their vision. And just the reliability, their reputation. I think that's probably the most valuable thing that there is. And yeah, I mean, Base knocked it out of the park with that. We couldn't ask for a better chain to deploy on as a derivatives exchange.
So you started on Phantom, and then as you mentioned, the timing was quite good to move to the super chain, through Base as the first touch point there. And then you've also deployed on Mode, which is how we met each other and how we've become partners at Charged Particles. So I wonder, if you could explain a little bit of the thought process. What brought you to Mode? What was so attractive there? And how has that experience been within the Mode ecosystem?
Yeah, I would still say that there's quite some time sort of to like still needed to pass before I could probably give a good like summary like I can for Base because we've only deployed on Mode a few weeks ago and there's still a lot of things that we're working on right now in terms of like deploying our freestyle product, which provides much better derivatives trading experience, as well as finalizing together with the Mode Foundation, sort of, what incentives will be coming, as well as like liquidity and stuff. So, but for now, I would say from like let's say an infrastructure perspective, it's really easy. I mean, it's pretty simple. Like it's all sharing like the same OP stack, superchain. So it's very similar for Base. It was a really easy deployment on the technical side. Nothing really too much to have to adapt to. We do use Chainlink oracles though, and Chainlink isn't deployed on Mode, so it did take us like a month or a month and a half to kind of negotiate with the existing providers there to be able to deploy like Chainlink like oracles. So on the technical side, like I would say overall, it's a very smooth process. It's very easy for people to deploy on Mode. Uh, Talking with the foundation has been great. We also like we have a really great point of contact who like I would say he's the guy who kind of sold us on the entire Mode vision. His name is Deez, if you're familiar.
Indeed,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like he's an amazing guy. I think he's like one of the best BDs in crypto, for sure. And he just got us super pumped and excited about Mode. Really was able to explain what makes Mode special and why is it special for our protocol. Uh, since Mode is really focused on the passive yield aspect that you're earning with all of your restaked ETH and stuff. And so with our product where we have an auto compounding index of blue chips that can further be used in any liquidity pool or as collateral, it really fits with the vision of Mode in terms of capital efficiency, earning yield on yield, create like building these crazy DeFi Legos. Uh, so yeah, I think like for us, Mode really aligns with the vision of what we offer as a protocol, because Base is a lot more generalized in that sense, and it's a lot more, appealing also to like NFT people, like to all types of projects. Whereas it's also like nice where Mode is kind of focusing on a specific niche, which, happens to be our niche. So that's what I would say is probably the nicest part for us. Just being able to really kind of have the same vision of providing increased capital efficiency for everybody who's using the chain.
Right. I would tend to agree that that's one of the reasons we're so excited to be on Mode as well. Not only for the warm welcome and the enthusiasm, but that real focus on innovation and pushing the needle forward in terms of DeFi. And there are all sorts of these different Lego blocks that you alluded to, and I would love to start to dive into some of the particulars that make BMX so interesting as well. But there are really so many different angles that people are taking within the Mode ecosystem and more broadly. And for people who might be just getting started with DeFi, there's like quite a lot to unpack there. So as a way to transition through some of those things, I wonder like what would you say to someone that's just getting started with DeFi, and they're learning about all of these different building blocks and Lego pieces. How does someone get started with so much information out there? Or if you could give a little insight to someone newer.
Yeah, I mean, I've had like friends ask me this question over the past years. So I've gotten this before. It's always a tough way to answer, I think, because there's a lot of different things that you can recommend. I feel that probably the best thing to recommend is just to kind of take it slow and easy in the beginning. Really just focus on exploring the different types of protocols that there are from different categories. So that way you can sort of understand if you're more interested in DeFi or you're more interested in NFTs. As well as like let's say are you like looking for spot exchanges or derivatives or lending and borrowing or crazy yield strategies that are being provided. I feel like right now there's like a lot on offer and anybody would be able to find something that's interesting for them. But really just kind of take it slow, take it easy. Don't dive into, trying to flip multiple shit coins or something, and then like losing all your money and then becoming like angry at it. Because I see that happen a lot where I recommend somebody, to enter. I tell them all of this, but then they go ahead and then, they don't know what they're doing and they try trading and stuff. So like just be careful with that. I think like my point of view is a lot of people are obviously getting into DeFi and crypto to be able to make some additional income. And like my point of view for that is first just try off using like reputable protocols to earn just yield. Try to farm, try to figure out, the different DeFi strategies that, exist. Um, and then like from that, as you become more familiar, you can also kind of dabble in like trading some of the DeFi or protocol tokens, because they're definitely like easier to flip, I would say, and trade if you have some info, than the typical like Sol, Bitcoin, ETH with like leverage and stuff. So, and like avoid leverage, in the beginning, unless you know what you're doing. But yeah, so I think just taking it easy, figuring out what you like, and building on from there really is the way to go because you can't like just recommend one specific protocol being the only one that will appeal to everybody. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'd recommend.
Yeah, and in terms of taking it slow and getting your toes wet and this sort of thing with lots of different protocols, that's sort of one of the goals with our Web3 Packs product is making that process of onboarding to lots of different platforms and really getting exposure to a wider scope of the ecosystem, and making that easier. Just because sometimes for people who are new, it's hard to even find these different platforms and protocols and know which ones that are worth getting involved with. So with Web3 Packs, which BMX is a member of, people are able to onboard into the mode ecosystem and get several different tokens all in one really simple bundle and one transaction. And so for people who are looking for like a bundled kind of strategy and to get broad exposure, that's really what we're targeting. And one of the tokens that's in our ecosystem Web3 pack is the WMLT token, which is the wrapped mode liquidity token from you guys. So I wonder if you could explain a little bit of the concept behind that token, how it works, and why people would be interested in exploring that angle of DeFi.
Yeah, so Wrapped MLT is a essentially it's a vault similar to Yearn vaults, which is accepting MLT, our platform liquidity token for spot and margin trading. It acts as the counterparty to trades. It earns all of the fees. Well, it earns 60% of all platform revenue coming from spot and margin trading, liquidations, minting and burning fees. Um, so WMLT then further takes that yield, auto compounds it back into MLT. So it's constantly just taking all of that yield, increasing the liquidity that's on the platform. The user sees this as like an APY that they're earning. And then what happens is they can take that WMLT, use it in something like a liquidity pool on Velodrome, or currently we're in discussion with Ironclad, trying to get collateral or like WMLT listed as collateral. And like the possibilities are really endless. The idea is that you're able to just further utilize liquidity you're providing to our protocol and then provide liquidity to other protocols. So it's all in the name of capital efficiency here. And yeah, we provide easy options for users to just immediately zap into wrapped MLT. So you don't have to go through, the separate minting, then wrapping process. You can use any blue chip tokens such as Mode, wrapped EETH, USDC, etc. And you can just directly zap into wrapped MLT and you're good to go. It'll just be in your wallet, which you can then further use if you want to in something like Velodrome.
Great, yeah, and we've had the pleasure of speaking with those teams as well, and really love just how connected the ecosystem is within Mode and the super chain in general, and it's great to hear some of those familiar names popping up. Of course, with Ironclad and Velodrome, those tokens are also inside these Web3 packs, and so people can buy one of these and get access to all of these incredible protocols within the Mode ecosystem. So yeah, just to move a little bit more broadly, I would love to kind of wrap up our conversation with just some, questions looking forward into the future of DeFi. And I'm curious, as a developer that's quite deep in the space, what you see as some of the most exciting emerging trends, in DeFi, and what kinds of innovations get you the most excited looking forward the next few years. And that could be either for what you guys are building or more broadly, just that you see other teams working on.
Yeah, I think I have like two examples that come to mind right away. So for us, currently the most interesting field that we're seeing innovation in and a lot of progress is intents and DeFi utilizing intents. So in our case, we have a product that's called Freestyle, which is a front end for the intent-based trading engine called SimIO, which allows for bilateral sort of trading agreements to happen between a user and a counterparty. And this counterparty just hedges the positions themselves on Binance. So they're staying delta neutral, just farming, the yield. And with this, we're able to essentially offer any market that's on Binance, but on chain while keeping all of the users' funds on chain. And right now, I would say the most interesting thing that we're looking out for it would be the decentralization of intents, because that's probably the largest kind of counterpoint to them in crypto, I would say at the moment, is that all these systems are really heavily supported by off-chain infrastructure, such as, running something on DigitalOcean or whatever. Um, and what we want to see is, being able to bring this even more so on chain, because there's already been quite a few years that have gone by with other types of derivatives protocols, such as order book based or virtual AMM. And we've been able to see the benefits and the disadvantages of each system. So far, it seems that if you have enough investor support, then you could probably make an order book DEX work really well, such as like Hyperliquid. But I think intents, once they're sufficiently decentralized, it's just so much more easier to provide the service on any chain that you want, utilizing essentially universal liquidity across all the chains. Um, and we're just going to have different front ends, which are providing this interface all from one trading engine. So yeah, I would say the most exciting thing for us is definitely intent-based trading. In general, in crypto, I would say that one example that really kind of sticks with me right now is the work that the Base team are doing with on-chain kit. So this is kind of a all-in-one solution, sort of library SDK thing that anybody can utilize to really quickly prototype and deploy applications without having to deal with a lot of the common developer pitfalls when you're building something. So they recently released like a week or two ago transaction feature where it handles all of the transaction status and processing on the front end for you. Whereas before, you'd probably spend like a couple of hours at least just writing all of your own custom hooks. Like it's an entire additional folder in the project that now you don't have to write anymore. And it also bundles a lot of other things to make it easier for developers, such as account abstraction. The good example like would be using Coinbase's smart wallet. Aside from that, simplified hooks for NFTs, being able to fetch the data, display that image on the UI. A lot of this really is super, super helpful to developers and to attracting more people to be, building different crypto applications. And what's great about it is that it also can attract people who don't have to have such a deep underlying understanding of the blockchain. Because, when you're writing your own transaction hooks and then you have to figure out like what's an appropriate way to boost the gas if the transaction isn't going through on like Base or something. And, you have to go down a bit of a rabbit hole there to really understand what you're doing and why you're doing that. So with Coinbase, it's a super easy solution, which can attract more, I guess, Web2 kind of focused developers. If they just have like some crazy idea that they want to deploy on chain really quickly, on-chain kit is the way to go. And yeah, I'd say that I'm really excited because they're adding more features constantly. Recently, I was at Basecamp in California, where I was able to meet with a lot of the base team that is working on on-chain kit. And yeah, they're like, it's a great team. Everybody's super focused, high energy, and they're just pushing updates constantly. So I think like probably within a year, it might be, the absolute, go-to solution just for anybody, because it simplifies everything so much.
Great. Yeah. Well, so, jumping off of that a little bit, just one last question here for you. So looking at those, potentially Web2 developers making maneuvers into the space, and having the tools to make that transition a little more simple, or perhaps looking at, people who haven't started their DeFi journey yet, but maybe they have invested in more traditional finance before. Could you give just talking towards these newer folks, that are coming from the Web2 and centralized TradFi world, why is blockchain important? Why is DeFi the future? Why does it matter? Why do you think it's sticking around?
Uh, First off, it increases accessibility for a huge amount of participants. So, I mean, a good example is like to be able to send money to somebody, you need to open a bank account. Um, and that takes quite a bit of time, especially, like if you're not an immigrant, like that'll be easier. But let's say you just moved to a new country, it'll probably take some time, a few months before like they even approve you, in many cases. Um, as well, like the same thing for credit or whatever. And with DeFi, it provides universal access to being able to instantly transfer funds. We're already seeing businesses starting to accept USDC as payment, especially with the Coinbase system and Base, because that's essentially just free transaction fees. Um, so really, I would say it increases like accessibility the most. Another really important aspect of it is transparency. There just been many cases where there was not enough oversight on a company. I mean, a great example would be FTX, I guess. Like that's, the poster child of these examples. But if we were able to see everything transparently and track it all on chain, it would have never gotten to that stage. And this has happened so many times in different financial companies. Um, it's it's a huge issue currently, and yeah, like aside from accessibility, transparency slash being able to verify, um, I would also say that in some cases, in general, it just makes more sense to deploy something on the blockchain compared to a traditional like financial application. Because there's a bit of a misconception, like, we should deploy like, let's say, entire AAA games somehow on the blockchain, but that's really not going to work and it's not what it's meant for. But if you apply to something like tracking supply chain, or like one good project that was working on that still is, need to check up on it, VeChain. Um, so I would say like those are really the three main kind of factors of why blockchain is such an important technology. At its core, it's a public ledger that you cannot tamper with. So it's also great for being able to store medical records and then, having to verify that between different institutions because sometimes they'll say like, we can't access this data, and then you're kind of in a bit of a catch-22 situation where like, your doctor's asking for this, the data, but you're not able to provide it or like they're not able to view it. And yeah, so just removing a bunch of the friction, removing middlemen in these cases. Um, and overall, I would say that code will beat out humans in many applications just because code can run forever. It is universal and it only runs per its specified parameters. And in the, sphere of finance, this is exactly what you want. You don't want somebody, subjectively deciding if your transaction should be going through or not. Uh, so yeah, that's what DeFi is for. I think it's a good way to put it is that DeFi like is for the common.
Great. Yeah, well, thanks so much for your insight and for joining us today. Looking ahead and diving deep as well. Yeah, thanks so much, Morpheus, for stepping on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for inviting. It was a pleasure to chat.
Yeah. And for anyone that's looking into DeFi and the base or mode ecosystems and likely onto other chains within the super chain going forward, then be sure to check out BMX. We'll have all the various links and info for your project as well as for charged particles and Web3 packs. So yeah, really looking forward to continuing to work together.
Absolutely, yeah. And really excited to see how the packs take off,
Right on.
especially the DeFi one wasn't launched yet, right? It was just the ecosystem one
Yeah,
so far.
ecosystem came first and
Okay.
DeFi coming up next. We'll see when this video makes it out. So it should be soon if it's
Okay.
probably just around the
Awesome.
corner, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, the DeFi one is the one I'm really excited about because that's going to be like stackable yield on top of stackable yield,
Yeah,
WMLT inside of it already. Yeah, it's going to be a great pack. Make sure to check that one out.
for sure, for sure. And stay tuned. We'll have more information on that coming soon. All right, everybody, until next time.